welcome to a new episode of the brand called You. Today we have a very interesting young lady, Suparnaa Chadda. Suparnaa is a single mother working in the media industry for 2 decades in various capacities. Suparnaa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for having me and for calling me young.
You are. Suparna has learned and contributed in almost all media till date, starting with radio, moving on to TV, print, events, and digital media. My God, you seem to have covered the entire spectrum.
Yeah, it seems every few years one needs to reinvent yourself to be relevant, and that's what I've been doing.
Wonderful. Then you also you have your own Simply Suparna Media Network, which is curating media, marketing, and advertising events, and you're an author.
That is correct, yes.
So Suparna, tell us a little bit about your early life in media and what were some of your learnings and some of your challenges.
So I started off with the media industry in the year 2000 more by accident than anything else because I needed to survive. And media seemed to be a good option where I got my first break with the Doordarshan, as do a lot of media personalities in India. And since then, it's been a journey. When the private FM radio station started here, before that, it was for an international radio station. Much before the KPO and the BPO booms, we used to create programs and send across agnostic to time and date overseas for the Indian audience. And then, of course, UTV movies, television happened, magazines happened, digital, and then event.
Very interesting. And some interesting episodes of your journey when you were at television or some challenges you faced?
I think my biggest learning that has been, being a part of the media industry is that there's a huge challenge since I've been on both sides of the table, creating content for various platforms. And the other side, when the marketing guys are looking to put in monies or get the moolahs in, I've become acutely aware of how the industry economics works. And you'd agree with me, I think media per se is always cash strapped, unfortunately. And to be able to survive, they reach out, of course, to the brands, and the brands are always looking at empirical data and evidence, also known as, in the broadcast media terms, TRP.
Correct.
And to be able to get those TRPs, one literally resorts to creating content which will ensure getting you eyeballs. Now, whether you need to sensationalize some things or put them across much beyond what their actual value is, and it's a kind of a vicious circle which to survive, a lot of media industry, and especially when you're in the news industry, it tends to hurt, the content that you're trying to put out there.
Absolutely. So, in the last 20 years, with the advent of social media, and I'm not a media person at all, I've been in the corporate world as an entrepreneur, but I believe that with social media, a lot of news and information has got democratized. So earlier what used to happen was the news anchors and the owners of the channels would generally, or editors, would generally give their view.
Correct.
Today, I as a common man have the ability to say exactly what I want and interpret it the way I want.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful way of putting that across. But having said that, still, you'd agree with me now with this brand like you, podcast and videocast as well, you need to be able to distribute your content at the right channels. And unless you have that stickiness, you may be saying the most optimal thing or producing the best content, you will not be able to reach out to the masses unless that is carried that far and wide.
I agree.
And in fact, I just recently got introduced to this new social media platform called TikTok. And the kind of content which is happening on TikTok, I can't really figure it out. On the one hand, I would imagine that social media would give me the opportunity to, say out loud what I feel is correct. But on the other hand, it seems that it's exactly what the traditional media is doing, or the broadcast media is doing, putting out content which simply grabs eyeballs by hook or by crook.
Correct. And I think that seems to be the driver for a lot of these channels, TikTok particularly. And yet you have some amazing stars who have been created because of TikTok.
Okay.
In fact, one of the BJP candidates in Haryana elections is a TikTok star.
Wow.
So
I'm going to zip myself up at that.
I agree. So coming back to you, you won the top controversial blogger award.
Yes, controversial blogger. That always gets the eyeballs.
I was fascinated by the top controversial blogger award. Tell us about
So this was something which the BBC World Service Trust did with the Communications Initiative website, wherein they were looking at people who can write pieces on the development issues of countries across the world, and of course the media angle to it. So this is something much before Arvind Kejriwal also came into the picture. This was at the time when the Anna Hazare movement was out there, and I remember a friend of mine had organized a campaign, so to speak, against bribery in Noida. Noida is where I stay, and I was a part of that whole activism kind of a movement. And I realized at that point in time that while I've been with the media and I offered to get the media there to cover this, what we are trying to do, in between things went awry, and the police came in, they rounded up all the activists. There were women and children who were rounded up, took to the police station and all. And the undercurrent there was like, it's okay, now we will get more media attention, because now since women and children have been rounded up and taken to police stations, it will grab more eyeballs. And I was wondering, so it was the same time when Poonam Pandey had said that if India wins or something like that, I will drop my clothes and go in nude. So it was almost like, just for that media attention, you're ready to do anything. Right? And that's a piece that I wrote on, and it got picked up as the top controversial blogger.
Oh, that's very interesting. But you're absolutely right on people wanting to get or do anything to get attention.
Right.
This whole selfie craze that I keep reading about, and so many people hurt themselves, falling off rocks, falling off bridges, only because they want that 1 second of stardom.
Right.
That's quite frightening.
I don't know if you've seen that skydiving video. Was it skydiving or parasailing, where this guy was there holding onto the camera, and he was really, really very, very scared. Initially, it was like, I'm having a good time, and then post that, it was like, bhai, 200 rupees aur le le, mere ko land kara de.
I agree. So let's talk about your Simply Suparnaa media network.
Yeah.
You say you want to create a positive narrative for the nation.
Correct.
Help me understand, what are your objectives?
Like what we've been discussing about how we found ourselves in this vicious trap of creating content which is sticky in terms of getting eyeballs, whether or not it is the true picture of what we'd like to portray. At a larger level, I think, I hate it when somebody refers to India as a slumdog country. That is not something that I would like India to be known by, or Delhi to be the rape capital. I understand there are issues, and there are issues across the world in developed countries as well. But I feel there are vested interests which highlight issues just to sensationalize whatever they're trying to say and further their own personal causes. And that is something which I personally don't agree with. And when I have conversations with like-minded people, they tend to say the same thing, because internationally, India, as you know, now people don't want to invest because our own media is talking so loud about the fact that this is not a country where ethical work is happening, or everybody is a criminal, or, my own family's been outside. My brother's been out for almost 40 years, 45 years. My sister's been in Canada for many, many years. And she herself, on a personal level, when she has to buy something online, she would be like, Indian portal se main kharidungi kyunki they're all cheats. So can you imagine the kind of narrative that we're building across the world? I mean, not only at a micro level, but a macro level too. And I refuse to believe in a country which has given me education, which has given me wonderful friends, which has given me the kind of exposure that it has, I'm a very, very proud Indian. And I want to do my bit to be able to contribute to creating a better narrative, so to speak. I know it sounds very aspirational, but unless somebody holds the bull by its horns, it's not going to happen.
So give me an example of how you have changed the narrative.
I'm not sure if I have. I
Okay.
can't
Or you're
take that
trying to change the
higher ground of,
No?
yeah.
Okay.
So, well, a couple of things, like for example, the Like a Boss series, which I'm doing, which tries to document the wisdom of leaders, and actually, create a kind of a repository of knowledge for people who are going to go into either the entrepreneurial space or the leadership space, learning from past mistakes of people who've been there, done that. Because a lot of this is not really taught in textbooks in schools and colleges. And, Women Endangered is actually a platform to help change our own mindsets. It's not about the other, but about me. How I am, despite whatever exposure I may have, I have such deep-rooted, ingrained stereotypes within my own mind, which I fail to recognize, which is doing an injustice not just to a particular gender, but everybody.
I agree.
Yeah. The third very important thing that I'm trying to do is the curation of the event called Sabera.
Yeah.
It's the Social and Business Enterprise Responsible Awards. It amplifies the voices of people who are doing good across the country. That good can be not just a CSR mandate, which has come off late, but it could be corporations going beyond the CSR mandate, beyond their profit incentive. And believe you me, they do. I mean, they're doing wonderful amount of work. The more I'm getting into this, the more, heartened I am to see. Not only corporations, but not-for-profits and individuals going beyond whatever their limited sources, resources, and odds are. I mean, I've come to know of stories of rag pickers who may have, gotten into bad company, they were arrested, and somebody was there to hold their hand to get them out of that. And now they're back into their communities, helping educate the children around so that they don't have a similar fate as to how they had. In Sabera last year, we acknowledged Chaya Sharma, who cracked the Nirbhaya case. Nobody knew about Chaya. I mean, unless, of course, post our acknowledgement, the Delhi crime series came across on Netflix, and now the world is waking up to the fact that here is a lady woman officer. And her acknowledgement speech actually said that thank you, Sabera, for acknowledging police officers, because it's not true that everybody is corrupt or out. We are true to our profession and we want to do our duty, and I'm grateful that you're going around and acknowledging, because a lot of times when you're in trouble, you of course reach out to them, and when things are sorted, nobody even looks back to give them a thank you note.
I agree.
So,
and there are stories of challenges we have faced in our country across the whole country.
Correct.
And very seldom do we recognize our champions.
Right.
People who have actually taken the step to be able to say, no, you will not do this.
Correct.
It invariably, the media picks up something, then invariably becomes politics, it becomes a screaming show on television.
Correct.
And the subject gets forgotten.
Correct. Correct. I mean, I want to share with you that our second edition for Sabera, which is due on this December, the anchor is the daughter of a sex worker. The infamous red light area in Mumbai, Kamathipura. She was supported by this NGO Kranti, and she, along with about 20 or 25 other girls, she was herself a victim of rape at the age of 10, because she didn't know what good or bad touch is. And growing up in the red light district, there is not much education or therapy or counseling that happens. And when Kranti came into her life, she actually started to think how her background is not her weakness, but is her strength. And she's gone ahead and she's got 100% scholarship, and she's studying at the Ashoka University. And if you ask her what her future plans are, I mean, it's not at all pretentious. All she says is that I want to make my mother happy, happier, and women like her happier.
Fantastic.
coming out from where we're coming out. So these are stories. I mean, I hear them day in and day out, and I'm amazed why this is not a tale that we are telling, as opposed to all the other stuff that we're kind of bombarded with on a regular basis.
That's so true. So moving on, you're an author.
Well,
and, you've curated a book, an ancestral journal on 20वीं सदी.
That is correct.
So
I've had
tell me about this.
My family lineage has been that of a publishing background. My grandfather started a journal called 20वीं सदी in the year 1938, the year that my father was born. This was before the partition, and it used to have its office in between a mosque and in between a temple. And my father was very young when the partition happened, and he says, I remember looking up to the 20वीं सदी board in between the mosque and the temple, while through the partition, arsonage, both the temple and the mosque burned, but 20वीं सदी board remained there. So that is an interesting anecdote that he shared with me. And 20वीं सदी at that point in time gave a platform to the most celebrated authors of the time. I mean, you name it, from Faiz Ahmed Faiz to a whole lot of names that wrote a lot of meaningful prose and poetry that became a part of that. And then my father, after partition, started this in Hindi called Nai Sadi Ki Kahaniyan. So as a tribute to him, I collated stories from 20वीं सदी and Nai Sadi, put them together, and HarperCollins published that for us. And if you read those stories, they're as relevant today as they were in 1938, 1947, or 2019.
Wow. And this is a collection of short stories?
That is correct. From Amrita Pritam to Khushwant Singh to, a very, very interesting set of stories.
And in English?
They're in Hindi.
In Hindi, okay. Wonderful. That's interesting, HarperCollins, because they published one of my books as well.
Wow.
On retirement. So.
Okay. You're not close to retirement at all. I can see that.
Well, I'm 63, so therefore. So now moving on to some little advice to the startup world. I mean, you've done a lot of work starting your own ventures, and India is called the startup capital of the world now, because there's so much work being done. You're doing so many new initiatives yourself. What are some of the challenges startups face?
I think the most important challenge is that you need to identify what exactly is it that kind of moves you, or you are committed to for a long-term relationship, so to speak. It's like the kind of energy that you invest in personal relationships is the same kind of energy that you have to invest in something. And unless you're passionate about it, unless you're committed to it, it will fizzle out. It'll be just like, fly by the night kind of an operation which doesn't last. So making money shouldn't be the objective or the end all of any work that you do, because if that's what it is, then believe you me, within the first 2 years you'll be out. You're not going to be making any money in the first 2-3 years at all. So unless you're committed to it, unless you believe in what you're doing, I think that's the biggest kind of lesson and learning. I don't know, how about you? You've been an entrepreneur, you've been a professional, and you've done many ventures. What would you have to say to it?
Oh, I've got lots of things, but we'll talk about that at a separate time.
Sure.
This show is all about you.
Right. Thank you.
So, but one of the questions that I've often asked a lot of people, you just referred to a lot of stories of unsung people.
Correct.
Who are not spoken about.
Correct.
And I say, even in the startup world, 9 out of 10 startups don't make it.
Sure.
And nobody wants to talk about the learnings of failure.
Correct.
And I'm trying to get people to start talking about learnings of failure, and that failure is not bad.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And that's the reason why we started with a web series like A Boss. It's actually documenting the wisdom. And that wisdom comes from the losses. In personal life also, I feel there are the kind of lessons that you can learn with setbacks. I don't think there is any other. It's a very valuable time when you're going through your downtime, because it teaches you some things that will hold you in good stead throughout your life. So that's how it is with the startup fraternity, and I don't personally like the word failure. Um, it's a learning. I would rather refer to it as a learning.
Sure.
That's what the wise men talk about,
Sure,
right?
I agree with you. So moving to a few questions about you personally, what would be three adjectives that describe your strengths?
Um, I think I'm stubborn.
Okay,
I would look at that as my strength.
wonderful.
I don't give up.
Yeah,
And I believe in a higher power. So I'm spiritual.
wonderful.
I think that's my biggest strength,
Okay.
my one and only adjective that I'd like to be known by.
Okay, thank you. Um, Another question is, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh, almost every day, I think. Just like, for example, yesterday I figured out what TikTok is all about.
Okay, okay.
So that was, and I feel when you have to say, how would you say that you have failed? I would say if you've not been able to reinvent yourself with the times or with the need of the hour, that may amount to failure, so to speak, because one has to keep learning,
Correct.
and that's the whole journey
And-
all
and
about.
moving
right?
on, I mean,
moving on, yeah,
If you fall down
correct. Brush
Get
your
up.
brush your knees, get up,
and
and
move
move
on,
ahead.
right?
Yeah,
And don't look back.
and don't look
I
back.
agree with you.
Sure.
I agree. So, question I ask all my guests, because a lot of our young viewers, and we
Yeah.
have between 15, 20,000 people who view us every day.
Super.
Um, and these young people genuinely believe that people who achieved a lot in life haven't
Right.
had any failure.
Right.
And I know you don't like the word failure,
Right.
but I'm going to ask you the question:
Right.
what is your biggest learning
Hmm.
from some of your failures or some of your setbacks?
Again, it's about not giving up. That's what it is. And not just professionally, I think personally as well. Every one of us have our own set of challenges that we need to learn from and grow. So there are only two ways, I feel. Either you can become better or you can become bitter. It's a choice that you need to make. And more often than not, it's better to be better than to be bitter. And that's how I define my entire life, both in terms of an entrepreneurial space as well as a professional, and as well as my personal space. Another very important thing, since you mentioned that you have a lot of young viewers, I think it's very important to learn from. It's almost like a reverse mentorship, because I have a daughter who's 20 years old. The amount that I learned from her is amazing. If I have to share with you an anecdote, I was going through a very, very tough time. I was going, personal, well, one can say it's a tragedy. And my daughter at that point in time was about 5 or 6 years old. But as a routine, I would take her out to the park in the evening, because that was the 1 hour that I got to spend with her after the whole day of working and putting food to the table and handling hazard other things. So those 1 hour or 2 hours that we spent in the park was really bonding time. And she could sense, kids are very, very smart. They can sense what's happening in their parents' lives. So she just inadvertently, she picked up, a handful of mud. And she says, Mama, ये देखो, अगर इसको मैं tight पकड़ती हूँ तो it flows out of my finger. If I let it loose, it will stay there. And that was a huge lesson for me, as to, if I'm holding on so tight to something, to not let go of it, it invariably will slip out of my hands. And if I just let it be, it's going to there.
Very
So,
well said.
so it's imagine a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old
Yeah.
can give you these kind of lessons. So our youth is so much more,
I-
with it
Absolutely.
today for all the learnings.
I agree with you. So my last question to
Yeah.
you. After such an amazing journey in media and doing so many of your own ventures, do you have any regrets?
I wish I had taken my professional learnings more seriously,
Okay.
because whatever I have learned on the job in the media industry. Not to say that there are any schools that can give you a lifetime's learning, but I think with all the young people who are watching your shows, it's imperative that when the time is there, it's very important to invest it in professional studies and professional getting to know the industry that you want to be in. That's the advice that I had given to my daughter as well. Because if you can, when life takes over, there are so many other things that you get drawn into, but this is the time if one can focus, and that's a focus that I didn't have.
Suparnaa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been very, very kind in speaking a lot of your mind.
I hope it was worth it. I'm very candid, and I hope there is some something valuable
just
that
keep doing all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.